Ann Doyle, but if you got the media on your side, you can. It's powerful, isn't it? Good morning to you.
There's nothing like having the media on your side, and you never want to pick a war with the media because they're always going to have the last word.
No business like show business. You know that best. After all, you were in the media as a television reporter, and then with the Ford Motor Company as a communications a specialist, and high up in the company, too. You advised Jack Nasser, the CEO of the Ford Motor Company, on matters just like this, didn't you?
I've been on both sides of that game, and yes, I certainly did. And obviously one of the toughest things that I went through was that whole Ford Explorer Bridgestone fire crisis when Jack Nasser was the CEO of the company, and that was part of the reason, not the only reason, that he eventually was fired.
Why do you think well, let me get back to that for just a minute, because there is a little bit of interesting news coming out of the Ford Motor Company. Now, Alan Gilmore is going to be president of Wayne State University, and you must have known him during his years at Ford, I'm guessing?
Yes, of course. I have a tremendous respect for Alan Gilmore. He's just a classy man, and he's a brilliant man. He was the CFO and eventually vice chairman of Ford Motor Company.
Why didn't he make it to CEO? Sounds like he was on the fast track.
I think it's fair to say at this point the kinds of things that people never said back then, because it was still very, very private. But after Alan Gilmore finally left Ford Motor Company, he came out as a gay man, and he lives publicly, very publicly now as a gay man. He's given quite a bit of money in terms of supporting of that cause, and but his entire career at Ford, that was not his life. At least it was his private life, but it was not something that people knew about him. But I believe that that's the reason that he did not become the CEO of Ford Motor Company, because they were just not comfortable, with that lifestyle choice as the CEO. After he left the company, then a number of years later, when they were really in trouble, they asked him to come back, and he returned to the company as the vice chairman, I believe, and COO. But he was never the CEO of the company.
How did he get along with Jack Nasser? Because it seems to me Nasser was a serious man's man.
Well, the thing about Jack Nasser and Alan Gilmore, and it was the unique thing about Nasser, was that unlike nearly every other CEO of Ford Motor Company and senior executive of Ford Motor Company over the years, Jack Nasser's career was not in North America. Jack Nasser's career was in other parts of the world. He actually grew up in Australia, and he headed South America, he headed Europe, and so as he moved up as a senior executive in the company, he spent very, very little time in North America. So one of the things unsettling to people when he came in, when he was brought to the U.S. in a very, very, very senior level, clearly about to be the heir apparent or the guy to beat for the chairman, was that nobody knew him, and they didn't have history with him. And so that was an issue for a lot of people. So it wasn't that Alan Gilmore and Jack Nasser worked together for many, many years along the way, but I would also say Alan Gilmore would have gotten along with anyone. Alan Gilmore was just a superb, outstanding leader, a brilliant man, and, excellent people skills.
The shares of Hewlett-Packard tumbled 8% yesterday following the forced resignation of the CEO, Mark Hurd. Seems like there's a little bit of a scandal there, or a lot of a scandal. What happened?
Well, I think a lot of people would like to know what happened, and I have friends who are pretty high up in Hewlett-Packard. I'm still trying to get the real scoop. But, nobody knows really, and everyone's being pretty mum. But essentially, here you have a highly respected CEO of the company who very, very quickly, from the time that a woman sent a letter to him, basically accusing him of sexual harassment, the board then had to investigate that as soon as that was in play, and he was fired. He lost his job. And it's very strange. Basically, this is a woman, if you go on the websites and look, this is a woman who's a beautiful woman, but exposes a tremendous amount of her very lush flesh in the way she dresses. And she also has appeared in quite a few R-rated erotic kind of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had been hired as some kind of a marketing person who apparently greeted people at parties, and it's kind of unclear what she did exactly. And somehow or other, Mark Hurd, the CEO, had some contact with her, and apparently there was not a sexual relationship. That's what they're claiming. But he was what he was fired for was violating the company's ethics policy in terms of some expense reports and things like that. But this is a critical error for a CEO to get involved with a woman like that, and you can blame her, but you've got to blame the leader of a very important company for. And he was a champion of the ethics policy, and so once the board knew about this, they had to investigate and they had to act. And don't cry for Mark Hurd. He walks away with about $28 million.
and a fudged expense report is what it's like catching Al Capone, right, for tax evasion. It sounds like.
Right, and everybody's being pretty mum. I mean, who knows what else went on? I mean, we'll never know. I don't think, but.
It reminds me of that old song, and I don't know the name of it, but the lyric at the end of the song is, "Well, you knew I was a snake." Right? I mean,
that's right.
You remember that song? It's
yeah. It's about trying to cross the river or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And you shouldn't be surprised at the end, or even Breakfast at Tiffany's. You can't tame a wild thing, and they come back and bite you. That's what happened. Sounds like they're at Hewlett-Packard.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff on the web about blaming this woman. I mean, come on. I'm not basically a champion for her, but the leader here is Mark Hurd, and he's the one who made the critical judgments, and he's leading a company, and he's paid for judgment. You
got to know better. And it goes back to Bill Clinton too when he was president. I mean,
right.
I mean, to have an intern in the Oval Office like that and not think that she's going to tell people is naive at best, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, in the 1960s, John Kennedy got away with them. It's unbelievable what John Kennedy got away with, but, the press didn't tell anything back then, and we are not in those days. I mean, everybody tells now, the people involved and the press, and so, yeah, it was crazy.
Sounds like you there as an Auburn Hills City Councilwoman may not have the Pistons as neighbors for very long.
Well, you're talking, of course, about the fact that the Ilitch family is now making a play for the Pistons, and I will say that I'm delighted. It would be fantastic to have the owners of the Tigers and the Red Wings, who've been outstanding owners of those teams, to own the Pistons. Certainly better than it being sold and taken away from Detroit. I don't think that would happen anyway. But our concern, of course, is we want the Pistons to continue to play at the Palace of Auburn Hills out here in Oakland County. And I saw in the paper this morning that Dan Gilbert is making a point about, major sports franchises belong in the urban center. Mm-hmm. Wrong. I beg to disagree with you. This is a huge metropolitan area in Southeast Michigan. You have people living all over the area, and you don't have to have every single major sports team downtown. And the other important piece for people to keep in mind about this is that the Palace is completely paid for. And the Ilitch's real agenda here is to have another team so that they can justify building a new arena. And, the whole business deal works better if they have the revenue from two teams in there. They don't really care about the Pistons. They want a new home for the Red Wings. That's why Tom Wilson was hired, and the Pistons just kind of makes that whole business equation work better. But the Ilitches have never built an arena without public financing, and this is no time in the state of Michigan for the taxpayers of Michigan to be asked to start financing another sports arena. We have a fabulous arena out here at Auburn Hills, and the Red Wings are welcome to come out here and play. Because we have a great ice out here, too.
That's terrific. Terrific talk from Ann Doyle, Ann Doyle Strategies. There's an E on the end of her last name, A-N-N-E, Doyle Strategies. If you want to connect with her, she's a leadership consultant and a leader, indeed, at 35 after the hour.